Good evening. My name is Brad Gerhart, President of the Marshall Area Chamber of Commerce. Welcome to this local candidates forum, which comes to you live from the Marshall Lyon County Library. Our thanks to KMHL, Marshall Independent, and Studio One for helping us share these forums with the residents of Marshall. Also, thank you to those in attendance here tonight. Due to the early voting, we are hosting tonight's forum 3 weeks earlier than 2 years ago. And now let's meet the candidates. We have 6 candidates for 3 open seats for the Marshall Public School Board. The candidates for school board alphabetically are Matt Coleman, Mary Swanson, Tim Van Moor, Ann Veldhuizen, Anne Marie Vorbach, and Charlotte Wally. Our media panelists for the public school race will be Mike Lamb, editor for the Marshall Independent. Thank you to those who emailed me questions ahead of time. More questions can be written down on a note card and given to Taylor. Taylor's got some back here, so if you need some questions, if you have questions, she'll pass you a card and then she'll get it back to Mike. Our timer, Matt, will be giving our candidates notice when you're down to 30 seconds, 10 seconds, and then 0 seconds. Candidates, you'll have up to 90 seconds to respond to each question. You can take less if you'd like. I think there's another candidate forum here tonight, like at 8 o'clock, that people want to go see it. So, all right, we'll rotate the order of speaking in the order in which you are seated. So Matt Coleman will have the first answer for the first question, Mary for the second question, and so forth. Each candidate will then have closing statements of 2 minutes each. Mike, your first question.
Good evening. The first question does come from the audience. Workforce is an issue in Marshall. What can you do as a school board member to fill the workforce pipeline in Marshall?
Matt. It's supposed to be.
This one is.
Test, there we go. Well, workforce issue, it's been an issue for many years, even before COVID. There's been a teacher shortage, a support staff shortage. What we've done since I've been on the board, through negotiations, we have raised the starting teacher pay, which I'm not sure if that's helped, but it sure doesn't hurt. There's programs within the state called Grow Your Own. There are a lot of programs to bring new teachers to school districts. Marshall is really very fortunate that we're in a large district. It's easier to fill positions in Marshall because our district is larger, more opportunities, I guess. And I don't see the problem going away anytime soon. So we do the best we can to hire the highest quality teachers we can. When I started on the board, we'd get 100 applications, just to tell you where we're at. We'd get 100 applications for an elementary teacher, and now we get 5 to 10 maybe, if that. And so it's just hard to fill. So it's going to be an issue, and we're doing everything we can to address it. So.
Okay, Mary?
You know, I work in healthcare, so my career is long-term care, and everyone knows that healthcare is seeing shortages across the board, so a lot of experience handling that. And I think you have to really look at it from a variety of angles, pay being one of the angles, benefits. You also have to look at how you recruit. And we learned in healthcare, you've got to start recruiting young, and so you need to start looking at those students that are interested in teaching. And get them interested, and then offer them opportunities so that they can get their license and college degrees. So I think if you look at all of that and different ways that you can staff so that it's appealing to the workforce. So we're still looking for the answer in healthcare, so hopefully we can find it in the school district as well. So
Thank you. Tim?
I guess for workforce, one thing would be within the district, I feel we don't necessarily inform our students of the available opportunities within the community, looking from a community standpoint. So to work with the industries within the community to maybe get tours and get them more involved to help to just help kids be more aware of what is available within the community, and then see if we can help educate kids to fill the needs. I guess I come from an industrial background, and kids just really aren't aware of what is available. And from that standpoint, and from the school standpoint, just opening up to where we recruit teachers from. Maybe they aren't traditionally educated as teachers, but they're at a transition point, whether they be people who took time off to raise their children. I guess my wife has come back and she's a teacher now at another school, but she has that experience of raising our children, so she can bring that into the school system. So from within the school and getting teachers, just recruiting those other avenues.
Okay, Ann?
I think creating, a really good sense of pride. You know, we have like the Tiger Pride idea here, where as students matriculate through the school system, they have a connection to where they've come from. So when they look at where they're going, they see not only Marshall, but our school district as a place where they would love to land, as a place that could give them stability, opportunity. My husband grew up in Marshall, left for college and was gone for a long time, and then we moved back when we had kids because the size of the town, the school district, grandma and grandpa being close by were all things that meant something to us. And the Marshall schools for our kids have been very solid and a very positive experience. So I think not only getting families and kids invested in our district, in the future anyway, that would lead to more and more teachers who would feel comfortable and even desire coming back to the place that had created in them such a love of learning.
Okay, great. Anne Marie?
I'll try this one. Yeah, okay. So I guess my initial reaction to that question, what can we do as a school board member, is kind of that everything we do is about this. When we are doing our job well, we're helping to create, we're part of creating a school district that works for all the kids in Marshall and helps them to become the people that they want to be, whether that's industrial or whether that's going on to college. So I guess my short answer to your question would be, what can we do as a school board member? Everything that we do on the school board is about improving this community and improving the students and the young people in this community so that they can seek out those opportunities to be a part of the workforce and whatever works best for them.
Charlotte?
When I heard Mike's question, I was thinking less about drawing in teachers and more about connecting with our partners in the community. And I work at Southwest Minnesota State University as the director of admission. So I think that the groundwork is already there. There are a lot of folks that are working to lift up those opportunities to help educate our students, our high school students in particular, on what's available. But I think that there's ways that we as school board members could enhance those efforts. So SMSU, for example, partners with Southwest West Central Workforce Council to host a career expo on campus. It just happened last week. Some of you might have been there, and that's one way that we're helping our students to learn about all of the different industries that are there and what they need to do to get to those jobs. But I think that there could be more awareness raised of that particular event, encouraging students to go and make the most of it. SMSU also hosts a college fair on campus. We're going to have 70 universities on campus for that. That's a great opportunity, again, for students to go and talk with those representatives about what are the avenues to get into those industries and come back. So I think just additional education, the groundwork is there. We can just help lift that up so that more students are aware of those things and taking advantage of it.
Yeah. Mike, next question.
This question is from the audience again. With the deficit that Marshall Public Schools is in, what area of costs would you like to see cut?
Mary, you're first.
Great, the budget question. Yeah, that's tough, and I think anytime that you work with budgets, I get to all the time, unfortunately, but When you look at budgets, I think it's important that as a school board, we look at what, we talk to the people that it affects. So we talk to the teachers, we look at the programs, we talk with the students, and we find out through the data what's working, what's not working. And then it really has to be transparent and in communication of what the board's looking at reducing, or if there's other ways we can get funds to fund the programs that are, needing to be looked at. So when you look at deficits, I think it's important that you have a conversation with everybody that it involves, and you make some hard choices sometimes, but we also look at alternatives to see what we can do to supplement that as well. So it's never an easy conversation, but that's kind of how I approach it.
Okay. Tim?
Oh, Tim, sorry.
I guess that's like a deal where I'd have to hear, as a board member, hear what's presented, what the problems are, where the shortfalls are, what our needs are, and what the available resources, and then work together as a team to make those hard choices. But it'd have to be one where you have to hear the research and just analyze what is available and what is needed, and then work together as a team to make those decisions.
Yeah, I agree with what both of you said. Having numbers or something in front of us to understand, what is the operating budget, what does that look like, would be helpful. The PTA is doing a fundraiser. If anybody wants to buy stuff from my kids, I have the forms in my bag. No, I'm just kidding. I don't. But I think it's the same as any budget, and I'd be hard pressed to find any organization, specifically a public or nonprofit organization, that is meeting or exceeding their budget right now. So across the board, it's conversations that we're having in our offices, in our homes, in our churches, at our businesses. So the idea of looking at what it is in our district that makes us who we are, what it is that is feeding our kids, our teachers, our staff, what it is that is energizing them, and focusing on those things that are going to have the greatest impact and making sure those things have support. I don't know what that would look like with funding, but I know that when we prioritize and when we make clear our goals as a system and we focus on making those priorities, then everything else around it becomes strengthened, and that includes budgets.
Yeah, this is a really tough question. And it's not always entirely up to the school board, right? Some of what we are voting on or deciding is brought to us by the people actually doing the work. So that's one of the important things to understand about being on the school board. It's not like we're all going to sit there and say, hey, what should we cut, right? That's sort of not the process that happens. But one thing that I think is important to me when I think about this is that what I would prioritize, what I think is, to use some of Anne's words, what makes us who we are and what has the greatest impact, that's teachers, right? Teachers and staff in the school. Those relationships that they have with kids are the most important thing. They are also the most expensive thing. So that's a really hard thing to say. But if I was looking at where to cut, I would want that to be the last thing to choose, because I think that is the most important thing, is the staff and the people in the building are what matters most. Matters more than the technology, matters more than the building itself, sometimes matters more than the materials. Our teachers can work magic with very little. Not that we want them to have to do that, but there is magic in that relationship, that teaching relationship.
I want to say retweet. That's what I feel like saying. Yes, retweet. But yeah, I don't know what I would cut. I don't feel like I understand the budget enough to say, oh yes, this is the thing that we can just afford to cut. But I would agree that for me, it's about the people, that I would want to find every way that we could to prioritize keeping our staff. Definitely the teachers, but also so many of the support staff are critical too. My son, if you know Reese Wally, he's very energetic, and I know that is a challenge for his teachers, and it's so important that there are multiple people in his classroom helping him to focus, but also so that everybody else in the room can focus. So yeah, that I think it's so important that we have those folks and that we help support them, not just in being in the classroom, but in being, happy, healthy, continuously educated educators. So yes, I agree. The teachers are the magic.
All right, we need to pass it down to Matt.
Well, I hope we don't have to make any cuts. Just to give you some numbers, we are operating on a little over $1 million deficit this year, but we'll still be left with $6 million in our reserve at the end of this year. So I hope we don't have to make any cuts. We probably will be looking at an operating referendum next November, a year from this November, 25. We did let our operating referendum expire in, I can't remember when it was, 18 or 19. So as far as voter-approved operating referendum, Marshall is one of the few districts in the state that doesn't have one right now. So that's something we can look at so we don't have to make any cuts. But I agree with everybody else that said that teachers and support staff would be the last things I'd want to cut. There's many other things you could look at first, just like utilities, supplies, and stuff, which I know everything affects kids, but I don't want to cut anything that directly affects the kids. So.
Mike?
Okay, another question from the audience. How will you build consensus with your colleagues?
Start with Tim.
I guess that's the deal where you just gotta build that relationship and not go in button heads, but strive to work together where you can. But if you gotta stand up for something, you got to be willing to stand up as well, but striving always to work together as a team and not working against each other and holding my way is the only way, but hearing people out and just working together as a team.
Yeah, I like that a lot, and remembering that at the core of every issue that arises, every conversation that you have, every decision that you make, ultimately we all have the same end goal, and that is to create a district that is strong, educates our children well, treats our teachers and staff well. And when we remember that we all have the same goal in mind, that makes it a lot easier than to share and listen to the approaches that might differ from your own. And trust that everybody in that room is there for that same reason, to make the district stronger and healthier, not just this year, but years and years and years down the road.
I think consensus building happens when we listen to each other carefully, when we're attentive to the unique perspectives, when we welcome each other. I don't know if you guys have ever seen a school board meeting, but probably the most welcoming person on the school board is Bill Swope. Every time you walk into that room, hey, how are you doing, right? So it's something simple like that, and we'll miss him when he's gone. But he brings a sort of like, we are in this together, and I'm so glad you're here. So I think that goes a long way towards building consensus. And of course, echoing what's already been said, we're there to be of service. And coming into it without an agenda, I think is also really important, right? We're here to be of service, to do the work of governance that needs to be done, not to assert what we think might be our own personal agenda.
Yeah, I think it's about listening to each other and trying to understand what it is that is at the core of why somebody is perhaps disagreeing with what you're saying. Maybe we can't both reach an agreement on one specific thing, but what is the core of what they're trying to achieve, and how might we address that? Definitely, I think being friendly and coming in with an open mind, listening to one another. I think that's a strength that I have. I'm always pretty open about saying that, like, I had majored in theater. I'm not the best with math. But I think I'm pretty good at relationship building and listening to people, and I think that's critical in a role like this, is to listen to the other people and listen to the people who we represent to our larger district as well.
In the many years I've been on the board, I don't remember any time where we didn't build consensus as far as everything we do is for the kids. And everybody that comes on the board knows that. And as far as building consensus, I think the big thing is just getting to know each other, like Anne Marie said. Everybody has different ideas and different opinions, but once we make a decision, everybody is on board to follow that decision. So.
Yeah, I agree with everything that's been said. I think you keep your eye on the goal. We all have the same goal. We want to represent our community well. We want to get feedback from our community members and bring it to the board to support our school district, which is at the heart of all of this, is the students and the teachers and the support staff. So, you know, I think if you go in with an open mind, you go in with the goal that you want to make things better, and you work together to make things happen, I think is the best way to have that all work.
What are your biggest concerns with public education as a whole, and what can the Marshall Public Schools District do to address those concerns?
We'll start with Ann.
I think as our community in Marshall and the surrounding areas grows, it becomes more and more diverse. It becomes more of a challenge to meet the needs of each child in their own unique ways. I can remember when my kids first learned what Eid al-Fitr was, and they came home all excited that they learned something new from one of their classmates, where they got to break fast with a student. But with change and with diversity comes its own challenges to honor each child, to maintain consistency in the classrooms, and to make sure that each child is not only seen and heard, but feels valued and feels safe. So far in my children's experiences in the district, those needs have been met. They've had fabulous teachers who do a good job of embracing the students, do a good job of entertaining the opinions, I should say, and the quirks of each individual kid. And in Marshall, even though it's continuing to change, I think our staff and teachers are doing a great job of changing along with it, and making this place a place where learning is more than just what you read in a textbook, but it's also about how your children interact with one another.
I'll echo what Anne has said about diversity and what she has said about creating feelings of safety. I think that's really important and really difficult to do with the various needs that students come with. So I think that is an issue with public education as a whole, and certainly shows up in our Marshall Public Schools, and we need to take that seriously. I also think it's really important. We are not there yet, but one value I hold for our schools that I would like to see happen is that we're able to hire more teachers of various cultural backgrounds, even teachers, you know, with different skin colors that match, you know, so that the children coming into our schools see people who look like them teaching them and in leadership positions. I think that matters a lot. The second thing I want to say, because I've kind of been on this kick recently, about reading and the READ Act. So we've heard a lot about this as school board members recently, and there's so much. I just listened to a podcast about it, so I'm very excited about it. But it came to me, you know, from what I'm learning on the school board. So Marshall Public School has, you know, some opportunity in terms of improving reading scores. And we're also, our teachers and Minnesota as a whole is learning a lot about what really works to teach kids to learn to read. I think that is such an essential skill, and what has been done in many school districts around the country over the years hasn't worked. And so we're now at a point, and the state is legislating it, we can make it happen. So I'm kind of excited about reading lately.
Yeah, I think as we have done, as the U.S. in general has done more to make sure that all students are in school, all students are being supported, and we just know the population has changed. There is so many more needs that need to be met. What these two have already identified, but also we know that we are so much more aware now of learning differences, how students learn, how we can best accommodate them to be successful. And those things are so important, but that takes extra time and extra effort to address those needs. And in my experience, admittedly, my son is a kindergartner, but it seems like we're doing a lot to address those needs, to make our students feel welcome and supported. But I would love to continue to lift all of those things up. You talked a little bit about students seeing people that look like them, and I would echo that. I really think that's important. I do want to say that I love, at Parkside in particular, there's quite a lot of folks who I know speak Spanish, and I know that in my son's classes there are a number of students that are Spanish speakers as well, and so I love that there's that chance for students to speak to somebody who shares the same language. And then my son benefits as well because he is learning Spanish in passing. Not a ton, but it's great. You know, we got a lot of room to go, but it benefits both groups. So I love that too.
I'll go back. The biggest challenge in public education today is the workforce again, which we've all discussed. But I'll discuss another one. Absenteeism in these kids is becoming a big problem all over the country. And I hate bringing up the word COVID, but since COVID, absenteeism throughout our school is big too. I talked to Mr. Jones, the high school principal. 3 weeks into the school year, he said there had a lot of kids had already missed 25% of their days. So, and I don't know how we address that. We call the guardians, the parents, whoever we can get a hold of. I think it's going to become a problem moving forward as well. So that's another big challenge.
Well, I agree with everything that's been said. I think for myself, the most things that I hear are safety concerns in all of the schools as our communities become more diverse and bigger, and the world is changing. That safety is a huge issue, and something that our teachers and our students shouldn't have to worry about being safe in school. They should be able to be there and learn and not have to be worried about physical attacks or verbal assaults. And I'm not sure how we fix that. I think it's a problem nationwide. But also communication. I think that the Marshall Public School System has done a great job improving communication to the parents and the community, and I think there's more room to grow there. So the more we communicate, the better we'll get.
I believe that we do struggle to prepare students to meet the needs within the community. We do very well at preparing students to go off to college. I guess I graduated out of Marshall and I could see the difference once I got to college, that there's a difference in schooling, and we do very well at preparing kids for that, but we tend to send those kids off to other communities then, and we fail to meet the needs within our own community in preparing for what's available here. And I also feel that a big problem is there's a fear about the diversity within the school that has caused some to pull students away from public schooling or out of school altogether. I guess my children are a diverse group, and we've been fortunate. We haven't really had any real issues with it, but within the community, for some reason in Marshall especially, there's just an adversity to parents even wanting to send their children to the school. So trying to work with the community and those families to help build up that trust within the school.
All right, next we'll do one final question because we're getting to the time, and we'll do final statements.
State testing scores is, always a kind of concern. What as a district can we do to continuously, bring up school test scores?
So what we saw presented to the school board recently in terms of test scores is that Marshall is doing really well in reading and math above the state average, and, excuse me, in math and science above the state average, and in reading have some improvement to do. So I'll just sort of go back to that thing I was telling you that I really like to talk about lately, which is this reading issue. And I think we're really well poised right now to be using the science of reading to be teaching our children, all children, to be able to learn to read by building foundational skills. So I think that's where we need to be, and we're going to see those scores go up.
I feel like Anne Marie has more insider knowledge than I do. But I do think that in general, like fluency and language comprehension are critical, and then that ripples out into all other areas. You know, if especially if we have a student who's isn't speaking English at home, we have to make sure that they have that level of fluency in English so that they can understand all the other subject material and then test well on it. If you're not understanding what the directions are on the test or those sorts of things, how are you able to test well in general? So I think just language and fluency is critical as sort of a foundation.
Well, concerning the MCA tests, I'm going to be blunt. I think they're a waste of time and a waste of money. There are a one-day test that these kids take, and I won't say most, some of the kids don't take them seriously. Here in Marshall, we have so many other things that we use to test kids to make sure they're growing. One is the NWEA, which is tested, I think, 2nd through 10th. I don't know. I'm looking at all these teachers. And then we have a new thing just in the past few years called DIBELS that the younger kids are taking. And we can get results. The MCA tests, they take them in the spring. We don't get the results till August. So that gives us a whole lot of time to prepare these kids for the coming year. These DIBELS and NWEAs, we get the test results immediately. And the NWEAs, we give them 3 times a year. So we know their score. So if I was in the legislature and it was up to me, I would get rid of the statewide MCA tests. So.
Well, I'm not a teacher, so I would go to the experts in this area and ask the teachers what they think, and the administration that deals with tests all the time. One, I did look at the results on the scores of our high school and just public school in general, and I think we have to take some moments to celebrate our wins too. We have some really good scores, and so I think we need to celebrate with the teachers and the students what's going well, and we need to ask the teachers where the deficits are or where the gaps are that they see, and how do we address that, and as them being the experts, taking their feedback and then figuring out how to make that work all together.
I guess I'd agree that we need to celebrate the wins and then look at what's going on there. Is there anything different that's happening in those wins? But also to look at where the losses are, if you would, for what's causing that as well. Is there something that causes some classes to do better? Is there something that causing some to do worse? And if we can find some reasons in there, maybe there are things we can change to do differently to improve that, I guess.
I agree with the celebrating wins thing. I thought it was a pretty cool report to see where Marshall landed in the state with math and science. That was pretty incredible and definitely something worth celebrating. I think when we have a buy-in, when teachers and students and parents and community members understand that teaching is more than just tests, then the tests just sort of come out okay. And I remember in college talking a lot about how, well, when you're teaching, are you teaching so your students pass the test, or are you teaching and giving your child skills so the test comes easy? And again, I'm not a teacher, so that would have to be a conversation to have with teachers to see how they can best communicate with their students in their classrooms, and what methods do they see as positive and having an impact on the knowledge that these kids take away.
And our candidates, it's now time for 2-minute closing statements, and then we'll start with Charlotte, and then we'll come back down to Matt.
Why did everybody laugh? So I feel like I have to acknowledge the fact that despite having lived here for 6 years, I still kind of feel like the newcomer. There's a lot of folks in this area who have been here for a long time, and you have family in this area. So I just want to recognize the fact that I am relatively new to Marshall, and that my son is a kindergartner. So I'm also relatively new to the school district, although he was also at Parkside doing Little Cubs the last 2 years. But I hope that that's something that folks can see as an advantage, because I come in with fresh eyes, a new perspective. I'm not going to come in saying, well, this is how we've always done it, or this is the only way that we can do it. I really want to have a chance to bring new voices and new perspective to the school board to hopefully help support and represent all of our families, as well as all of the teachers, staff, employees that are part of the district, because they are very much a part of it too. It is about the students, it is about the families, but it is also about the employees. So I hope that I can just be that new voice. And I think that I'm a pretty good, like I said before, I think I'm a pretty good listener. I want to make myself very much open and a part of this community. That's one thing that my husband and I have really strived to do since we moved here, was to find all the ways to be involved instead of just staying in our house. Can we go to the farmer's market? Can we sign up to be a part of different events? Can we come to the library? All those things that help connect us with our larger community and that help lift up Marshall in general. All those ties help make us a vibrant community.
Well, I am a man of few words, so there's no way I can talk for 2 minutes. So I just want to thank you all for coming, being involved in this. It's really important. And just want to say I love being a part of an organization that their main purpose is to ensure all kids succeed. So with my experience, I guess that's all. That's only about 30 seconds. So.
Yeah, so I come from educators. I grew up in the cities. My mom worked for the Chaska School District, and my dad worked for the Edina School District. And so I was raised with this education is so important foundation in my life. And when I came down here to go to college, I met, my husband who grew up in Marshall. And so we've been here ever since, and we've raised our children here. I have a junior in high school right now, and I just graduated our first child last May. And so being a part of the school board is important to me because I think it's important to give back to your community, and I also very much value education. I think that is so important for our kids, but also for our community as a whole. And so it would be a great opportunity to do that. And I have a background in collaboration, team building, leading many different, from Schwann's to Vera to now Sanford. So I have some experience with leading teams and negotiation and collaboration, and so I hope to bring that to the school board.
I did attend school here in Marshall and did have a positive experience with it. And now I'm a father of children that attend, and I see that there are positive things going on, even though there is a fear in the community to put children in the school. But I see positive things going on. I do see some shortcomings in that we don't necessarily fulfill the needs within the community. As I've worked in various roles through the community, there are some shortcomings there. And then my jobs have exposed me to diversity, and I've grown and learned from that. But unfortunately, I've also seen within our community there's an adverse reaction to diversity, and sometimes that's the fear that people have within the Marshall School. So I think we need to make strides to help close that gap. Because something's just holding people back on that, and there's a lot of things we can learn from each other when we welcome a diverse group. So that's what I think we need to work better at.
Before coming here tonight, my mom said, "Are you nervous? Are you nervous?" Well, you're making me nervous on the phone. Are you nervous? Are you nervous? But the main reason why I said no is these chairs up here are filled with incredible people who want nothing more than to strengthen our school districts, to support our children, to support our staff, and ultimately create a community in which we can all be proud to be Tigers. So I wasn't nervous about that at all. Not nervous about talking in front of people. That's what I do for a living. What makes me nervous is that this job comes with a lot of responsibility. And the decisions made in a school board room affect children, not just today, but all the way into the future. And that is something that it carries very heavy on my heart. My kids are in 3rd and 5th grade. I have a middle schooler. Not sure how that happened so fast. And watching them grow and matriculate and mature in this district has been an absolute joy. We've had phenomenal experiences. Even when we had problems that needed to be addressed, they were addressed in healthy ways. And so for me, running from this place is an investment in our schools, our children, and our community as a whole. Because when you fall in love with and have positive experiences growing up, you can't wait to come home. And that is something that I want to contribute to on the board.
I will not be as few words as you, Matt. I'm going to take my whole 2 minutes. I was up here in 2022 and shared some things at that point, which I think still hold true for me. So I want to take a minute to share those again and just to talk about what I think are the traits of a competent school board member. So I think a good school board member is attentive and a good listener, is intelligent, able to understand complex issues and make decisions about those issues, willing to speak up and to seek clarification, willing to disagree with respect, accessible and available to talk, stays in their own lane, that is the lane of governance, that is the job of the school board, understands the necessity and value of compromise, has a deep appreciation for the value of education, can change their mind and is open to change. And then I also want to say, one of the most powerful ideas that I've encountered in recent years has a name. It's called the idea of beloved community. And it comes from Martin Luther King and his work creating principles around nonviolence. I see the work of the school board as part of creating beloved community based on love and fairness for everyone, even and especially those who are the most different from us. So on a school board, this can happen in a somewhat mundane way, right? We have these televised meetings. We do Robert's Rules of Order. We listen to presentations. We look at, policies and budgets. But the heart of it is building an education system that works for everyone. And that is an act of love. And that's something that I think is a profound thing to be a part of.
Great, thank you. This concludes our time for the Marshall Public School Board race. Thank you all for participating. Good luck to you and good job tonight. We'll now take a short pause as the next panel take their places. We'll resume the panel at 6:45. If you're leaving, leave, because we're going to start in 2 minutes. So, thank you. Yep. Good luck. Welcome back. We'll now hear from the candidates for Marshall Mayor in City Council Ward 2. Once again, we have questions that have been submitted ahead of time, but if the audience is interested in submitting a question, please grab a note card from Taylor again. Just raise your hand. At the end, you'll have closing statements of 2 minutes, 2 minutes each. Our media panelists for this forum will be Aaron Ziemer, sales manager general manager at Marshall Radio. Let's meet the candidates. We have 2 candidates for Marshall Mayor's race, 3 candidates for City Council Ward 2 race. The Ward 1 and 3 races are uncontested this year, so those candidates will not be part of the forum tonight. Running this year in the mayor's race is Noel Ayala and incumbent Bob Burns. Running in Ward 2 for an open seat are Derek Deitz, Amanda Schwartz, and David Sturrock. Thank you all for being here tonight. Candidates, as I mentioned, you'll have up to 90 seconds to respond to each question, and you can take less if you'd like. Please be aware of our timekeeper, Matt, who will signal when you're down to 30 seconds, 10 seconds, and then 0 seconds. We'll rotate the order of speaking in the order in which you're seated, so Noel will answer the first question, and then Bob Burns for the second question, and so on. Aaron, with your first question, you can start, and then also introduce yourselves the first go-around for our listeners on the radio.
Thank you, Brad. What experience do you have that can benefit the city if you're elected?
Good afternoon. My name is Noel Ayala. I've been here since 2009. And in the years living here in Marshall, I have learned that it's mainly a lot about communication, the integrity, and being honest. We have grown our family here, and with that, it has established more of a stronger building within the community that we live here in Marshall. We have been able to not just be welcomed as newcomers when we came in 2009, but welcome those that have moved as well here to Marshall, and been able to enhance that welcoming feel, that family feel, open communication and the bond here in Marshall throughout the years. And that's one of the things that I would like to focus and continue enhancing here in Marshall.
Thank you, and thank you, Noel. The question was about experience. My background, I have served as mayor for 32 years. I was on city council 6 years prior to that. But what's more important than that is that I think I bring a knowledge of how to work together on the council, how to have respectful communications and decision making, and also how to have a vision for the future. You know, it's fairly easy to look backwards, but we really do need to have a vision of what do we want to see Marshall in the future while still paying attention to the present. So I think that's what I would bring, is kind of a focus on the vision for the future, but still paying attention to the needs that are current and present.
Hello everyone, I'm Derek Deitz, born and raised in Marshall here. Some of the skills I possess here to make Marshall better is I come from a farming background, first and foremost, so I understand kind of what's going on in that industry and kind of the ideas and I guess plans some of the farmers would like to see enacted in Marshall. So that I think is very important to have on City Council. I also run a business in town, Columbia Imports. I started that in 2016 and I opened up the shop downtown Marshall and really trying to rejuvenate the life of downtown Marshall. So with doing that, it just really allows me to hear feedback on the street from people and really get an idea of what people want to see in the community. So I also coach hockey, and yeah, just kind of an active member of the community.
Hi there, I am Amanda Schwartz. Just to kind of echo Derek, I also was born and raised here in Marshall. what I would bring is my passion for the community. I love Marshall, and I want to continue to see it thrive and the growth. My experience, I am also a small business owner. I'm a licensed child care provider here in town. So I just bring that experience. I also am engaged in a lot of community activities, the Aquatic Center Board, the YMCA Capital Funding, the Advisory Committee. I love working with people, and I love sharing visions with people. That's also important to me, and it's a skill that I would bring to City Council.
Good evening. I'm David Sturrock. Thank you all very much for coming. Thank you to the Chamber for providing this opportunity. What I offer is a combination of things. I have experience. I've served on the City Council. I've dealt with many of the same difficult questions that we'll talk about tonight. Had some perspective on those problems, and the things that seem new are usually just recycles of old problems, and there's some lessons you can bring from that. I hope for the chance to do that. At the same time, I'm in touch with a wide range of the things that make this a community. I have 2 sons in high school. My wife and I have been very active in youth sports, our church, their high school activities, and we have a sense of the things that make a community. You go through the life phases and you miss things, or you perhaps never had them. I'm satisfied I've had that mix of the things that people that shape their lives, people who maybe we never see at a city council meeting, but are passionately involved with one of those areas of responsibility or commitment. And I know that variety. I've worked with the community in a variety of ways. We'll talk about some of these, including the fact it's a very different community than when I came here to teach at SMSU 25 years ago. And those differences are exciting, they're challenging, but they also point to the things we have to be planning for and thinking about for the future of our city. More to come.
What are the biggest challenges facing Marshall's growth, and how would you propose to address them?
So it's really a balance. First off, addressing Marshall's continued growth. One is economic development, and when Derek mentioned the roots in agriculture, we are an agricultural community, and a lot of our growth is going to be based on those industries that complement not only agriculture but the businesses and the industries that are here also. But with growth and employment also comes the needs of the people, and we need to be the type of a community that can attract and retain families in the community. So that means not only the job, but it also means things like housing, available daycare, good health care, good education, good opportunities for amenities in the community. So really the challenge for continued growth is to really keep a balance of all of those things, and that's really the job of the City Council.
One of the biggest challenges I think Marshall faces in growing is retaining our young people. I don't know when I got the chart, but I've seen and I've lived through this experience where you graduate from Marshall, you get out of town, and you start a new life up in the cities, maybe somewhere out of state, and you really need to attract the young people to town. And this really goes for SMSU as well. We have a college here in town, and yet we have this problem of retaining young, vibrant, adults. And I feel like Marshall doesn't have enough amenities for that. And I think having, anything as simple as light recreation like bowling or roller skating, kind of like what we used to, as kind of quirky and simple as that sounds, I feel like just having somewhere to, even a dance hall or something like that, that attracts young people to Marshall and encourages them and to see the benefits of Marshall and how great it is too. So.
Yeah, I would say the biggest challenges that Marshall is facing right now is the lack of housing, affordable housing, and the lack of childcare. Speaking firsthand with childcare, I get 2 to 3 calls at least a week of either families trying to move to town, trying to establish childcare before they make the decision to move here, or current members of the community that just don't have childcare, and it's not allowing them to go back in the workforce, after maternity leave. There's a lot of sad stories of people that just cannot work because there's no childcare, and it's just kind of a trickle effect. We can't bring new businesses to town if there's not housing, and we can't bring new businesses to town if they don't have childcare. Our current employers are having a hard time keeping their employees because of childcare. We're losing childcare for sure once a month probably, and nobody is starting childcare. So if we can figure out a way to address that, I think that will keep us growing, and that's ultimately what we need.
Historically, our biggest limitations are size and location. And a number of things have given us tools to deal with those. The internet, obviously, a variety of communication links. Transportation links have gotten somewhat better, quicker, safer. I've had a role to play with that with my leadership of the Marshall Area Transportation Group. We have passing lanes, we have safer interchanges, some other things which shorten that distance, at least psychologically, between here, for example, in the Twin Cities, here in Sioux Falls. That work has to continue. We have resource constraints, as we heard about with childcare and housing. On the other hand, we do have land. We do have water supplies, which are reliable and affordable, critical for our industrial development, but also for consumers, and electricity, which is at reasonable rates and safe and reliable. We have a number of strengths to build on, and we've seen the fruits of that with all of the new development we've had over the course of these 20 years. The Chamber, I'll just give a little plug, Brad has more information, is doing an economic development tour later this month to showcase the things that have been built just since the last tour 2 years ago. But we can't be complacent. For example, the recent announcement, we knew it was coming, of the phasing out of the Schwann's yellow home delivery service. That's an asset that would have been crippling to our city if we'd lost it 20 years ago. Now it's sad and it's a misfortune, but we have other things to fill the gap. We have to continue to think about it in terms of how we build on those strengths.
I believe that we need to focus a lot on marketing. We hear a lot from other states such as South Dakota, Iowa, Wisconsin. They market like there's no tomorrow. Some of it it's pretty legit and some of it is kind of a little bogus. But Marshall does have the amenities to provide the growth. And as we can see, we have numerous options, from colleges being right down the road to programs and state assist programs that we can get workforce enhanced. But yeah, the attraction, as Derek was saying, that the youth is very, very picky, and I don't want to bombard the whole internet ordeal, the media and all that, but how we advertise it, how we bring it to the young generation, it's very important, because how we establish the growth and come here and build your family and build a career is going to mean a lot. I have a daughter that graduated high school, and her first thing was, do I go to college somewhere else or do I stay here? Well, she decided to stay here, on top that she's shopping in my house at a Walmart. But she understands that there's comfort here. She understands that work is just down the road. She knows that there's an option for grants at our local colleges here. She knows that, just down the road is mom and dad. But I think the marketing and the communication out there to the younger people is a big focus that we need to push on.
Several of you mentioned housing. This question comes from the audience. It's on that topic. Housing continues to be a cause for concern in Marshall. How can we unify with other communities, with other community partners, to ensure there is more housing options for people that are considering moving to Marshall?
Thank you, Aaron, for that question. That's a really good question. As we've seen since COVID, and as I've become a landlord over the past year, prices for apartments are just astronomical. I mean, it's tough to live these days, you know, even if it's your mortgage. The houses are up to, you know, 300 some thousand in Marshall, and it's tough. It's an economic question, I think, that digs a little deeper into what I'm able to answer right now. So honestly, I don't know.
Don't worry. Yeah, I'll be very honest. I'm kind of with Derek on this one. The beauty of city council is that you're not alone in your decisions. It's a group effort. You know, you're working with people. My goal is to just listen to my constituents, but also listen to city council, embrace the learning curve with all of this. That's not a question that I can answer directly at this time, but I am resourceful, and I do know how to learn and listen to people.
Don't worry, I don't have all the answers either. I will offer a couple of things I've observed. You break the housing market into segments. The high end, if you want to say more luxury-oriented properties, the market will take care of those. We've seen that in the history of our city, distinct neighborhoods where the economy was booming, there were lots of good paying jobs, those houses got built. The middle range houses, that's a difficulty. There's a short supply of houses on the market that the realtors list. We need more to get built, but there's a who goes first, the builder to take the risk or the homeowner to buy the place. If more jobs are created, the more demand will occur, but how do you get the jobs unless there's, and indeed the entrepreneurs, for example, Sologen is building its new plant in the industrial park, supposedly 40 good paying jobs coming with that, and the prospect of some high paying spin-offs in the future. But they're going to be waiting to see some indication that the private sector wants to take the chance and build those houses. Moderate income housing, we've had some success, probably more is needed. We have generous federal and state grant programs. They're highly competitive. We have some experience in our city in landing those. You need a mix of all those things. And even then, Marshall, when I first came here, people squawked about how expensive Marshall houses were. And I asked numbers, and I was not that impressed. But compared to what people knew in surrounding communities, we did stand out then, we stand out now, and that's a problem of supply.
We have talked about housing a lot, even, you know, past few months with some of my neighbors. Being first-time home buyer, you know, it was a debatable situation where it was like, what is better? Living in an apartment, having your home, paying more taxes. But we got to think about it as housing costs go up, is also how the cost for material is. And we kind of got to take that into effect that, you know, it's not just how the prices are going for housing. You know, we also got to look at how the cost is out there. Our contractors have to spend more on labor, have to spend more on material. Sometimes they give us a certain number, and then 3 weeks down the road, it's 3 times higher. But we have to understand that out there is options, and there is ways of making ends meet, and there is grants, and we are able to, hopefully down the road, once we get more housing established, that our builders and landlords will understand that there is families out there that would love to live here in Marshall, and we want to make that as more money saver, I guess you can call it, as possible, so they can find Marshall as a place to live at without having to break the bank.
Thank you. In fairness to, I think, everyone here, I don't think there's anyone that has all the answers on, you know, what can be done for affordable housing or to increase the housing stock. But I think there's a couple things that the city can and should do and are doing. One is to partner with those agencies that have expertise and access to funding sources outside the community. That might be state funding, might be federal funding. So those agencies would be either United Community Action or Southwest Housing Partnership. They have expertise in that. That's what they do, and we probably need to work with them more. There are some housing projects that are in the works. There's a planned unit development near Walmart that will be 3 36-unit apartment buildings that will be market rate that are under development right now. Will probably start this fall. There's application for state funding for an affordable housing and senior housing out in the U.S. Bank area off of London Road. So there are some things that are going on, but at the end of the day, we do need to find a way that young families can get into single-family housing, and that probably is increasing the options for some empty nesters to perhaps move into housing that they can stay in for, their mature years, and then that would be a more affordable single-family house that would be available. And we probably need to find a way to assist with down payment assistance and assistance with closing costs.
Daycare availability is at near crisis level in Marshall and Southwest Minnesota. What role does the city have, or should it have, in helping solve that problem? And what solutions would you suggest?
Oh, if only I was qualified for this. Yeah, so actually the city is kind of involved right now in First Children's Finance. The city is actively trying to help this situation. It might be even bigger than the city. The state has a lot of rules, and obviously I can speak to this firsthand. And it's really deterring a lot of people from wanting to become licensed, at least in their own home. There are a variety of different things you can do. You can do pods, the city-owned building where licensed providers go in and basically have their own little rooms, and they have their daycare. That's their thing. It's just a city-owned property. As far as what the city can do, if you can't find in-home daycares, you can make it appealing with grants, startup grants. But at the end of the day, if you don't have the people to do it, people with the right heart to do it, you won't find in-home. So your next step would be licensed child care centers. Again, it comes from having those properties available to do it, and then as well as the people. Even our current centers are having a hard time finding staff, sustaining staff, and yeah, I think it comes down to finding the right people and having the opportunities for them.
This too is a long-standing issue. I remember concerns about this 20 years ago when the Schwann Food Company donated effectively a building and heavily subsidized the operation of a daycare center right across the street from their headquarters, and they weren't able to sustain it very long for a variety of reasons. I've always wondered since then if our other employers, as the workforce shortage has gotten more acute over those 20 years, could be approached again, and pooling their resources and their talents to perhaps to latch onto that pod model as a sponsorship. I think some partnerships are going to be needed if we're going to make any progress with that problem. There are grants to be had out there. Our city, I must say, has had we have a very resourceful city staff that knows where to look for those things and to make a strong case for them. That has to continue if we're going to make some inroads on the child care problem. Frankly, and this is something no homeowner really wants to hear, it may even raise some questions about our zoning code at some point that we may have to take a fresh look at. I rather hope not, but perhaps all things may need to be on the table someday.
So it comes down to the marketing, how we attract more daycare providers, how we can have assistance for if they do it at their home, maybe some kind of grant that the city can provide, or maybe lead them to the way in those resources. But if it's not to that point where they want to do it at their home, then we can somehow, as a city, grab the information and use grants, if there is any available, to maybe use a space here in the city, so there is not such a high cost of the provider to have to pay into. Something like that would probably work. I know it is very strong on the licensing of what is required, how it's set up. We were looking at that at one point in time many years back. But, you know, we just want to be able to provide a safe home, want to provide more workforce, and want to provide that opportunity for more providers out there for daycare.
Amanda had mentioned the regulation. I think that's one of the things we need to work with our state legislators on is the regulations, and there's revised regulations that I believe are being considered right now. And is that an impediment, which we all believe it is, to affordable daycare in the community? I think some of the solutions that are being looked at are really ways of kind of getting around some of the regulations, like the pods, you know, where it's less regulated than a center, more as a home, perhaps use of some church space as a different set of regulations. So rather than trying to get around some of the regulations, I think we really need to work with our state legislators and state decision makers and on what are the reforms of some of those regulations, and how are they replicated perhaps in other states. Because if we look at some other states that have perhaps some less restrictions on the providers, are there any negative outcomes to that? So, we really haven't seen that. So anyway, it's a complex issue like all issues, but it really takes, you know, working with the expertise that is available.
Yeah, I think they touched on it pretty well. Running a business in town, I know how hard it is with codes and state regulations, you know, just even putting in a kitchen and everything else. And it's terrible to see this in the daycare industry too. Personally, I've seen this with my family. My brother Dawson just had a newborn this spring, and she had to go away for work, and the daycare provider broke her back, and everybody was kind of SOL. So it's a terrible, it's kind of a tragedy how much restrictions are becoming on like all of our industries. But I think Bob nailed it on the head, addressing the state regulations, and yeah, it really just comes down to knocking on Capitol door. So.
What can be done and should be done with the recent news on the budget of the new Marshall Aquatic Center?
Growth is good, and the community was very emphatic last year in approving the renewal of the sales tax specifically for the aquatic center development and construction, 62% I think. They want that improvement, and the careful planning that the volunteers and city staff have made have only whetted that enthusiasm. The problem is you raise expectations in a growth-oriented community like ours, and you find that costs go with them. The bids the city received were considerably higher than expected, so you have to make some tough choices. This is not the first time the city projects have faced that problem. And the good news is inflation is coming down by all the broad economic indicators. The problem is the prices are still higher than what we were used to just 3 years ago. So I think they're in the process of reevaluating what they want the contractors to provide, and they'll put out a new round of bids. I would trust part of that is to have a standby list of the things that the features and the amenities that we're going to downscale or do without initially, but figure out the engineering so that they can be added or upscaled when we have the revenue and the opportunity 2 or 3 or 4 years down the line. In time we can get the vision of what the community got excited about, but it's going to come in a couple of steps, and that's reality of city finances.
We know that our old pool was obviously a little bit outdated and we needed to get something done. So obviously the spending on the old pool wasn't a good plan. So this is where we came to the decision that we were coming to a new aquatic center. When we budget, as any other project, we know that prices change. But we can't push on a high expectancy of how the quality or design of a certain project is, but also focus on the safety and how it's going to affect the community. We can't just, in other words, we would have to be flexible on how we receive the information. If we were to be told that it's $5 million and we had to fix this, then you have to have the understanding that the materials, the labor, everything will come into effect and could change, could be lower, could be higher. But we do have to take a step back and take that moment to be able to reevaluate what we were budgeting for and make those adjustments. And if we have to eliminate or downgrade a certain design or whatnot, then that's the step we would have to go, and hopefully everybody will accept it and understand.
So let me focus on several points. First off, when the voters approved the extension of the local option sales tax, that was for a set amount of dollars, and that's $18.3 million, just over $18.3 million. That comes from sales tax. That's the number that we have to work with. When the bids, and beyond that, though, there is sponsorships and fundraising, which may come close to $1 million on top of that. So that's the budget that we have. When the bids came in as a general contractor form of bidding, far in excess of that, the city authorized a couple things. First off, the engineering firm was asked to go back and value engineer the entire project. You know, where can we cut some costs but still maintain the integrity of what the community expects from that. Secondly, the city has contracted with a construction manager that will, rather than one general contractor, will manage up to probably 10 or 12 individual contracts that likely is expected to save a fair amount of budget on this project. Will also probably allow for some local contractors to have the availability of bidding on portions of this. And then the last thing I'd say is that our goal is, certainly we have to bring this project in under budget, but we also want to do it on the time schedule that the community expects, and that means hopefully being open in the summer of 2026.
Aaron, could you repeat the question, please?
Yep. What can be done or should be done with the recent news on the budget for the new aquatic center?
Okay, the pool. It's been a big topic lately. My personal views about the pool, I've always wanted a new pool since I was a kid. When we were kids growing up, Marshall Pool was great. But then Pipestone would get a new pool, and that would be, they got the little splash pad or whatever there. And, I can see the appeal for the new pool. Personally, the location can be vice versa. The size and the budget, I believe, should still stay under 18 million. I would say, yeah, just cut back on a few of the amenities. Personally, I kind of touched on this earlier, is I think we could use these tax dollars in other ways too. $18 million is a big budget. So if you took $1 million and put it towards, one of these light recreation businesses, I think that would provide a lot more bang for the buck. So just, go back to the drawing board, maybe take out a diving board or two.
If only it was that easy. Just to kind of reiterate, Bob kind of gave you a lot of the details and kind of the plans going forward. touching on the emotional side of things, our community is very, very excited for this pool. That's been expressed in a variety of ways. It was a unanimous vote for yes for the extension of the sales tax. So yeah, we're going to keep pushing forward. The out of budget was a little bit of a setback, but overall, we're still moving forward. We're still positive about it. There's a lot of excitement around it still. It'll still be an attraction. It'll still be a destination in our region to bring a lot more excitement to Marshall. A lot of people moving here, guests, everybody is really looking forward to this pool, and it will be just as exciting as it was originally going to be, and we're very confident in that.
All right. Thank you, Aaron and Kenneth. It's now time for closing statements. We'll start with Noel. Your 2-minute closing statement, please.
So my closing statement tonight is, I'm not going to throw out there information that I know I can't complete without having a team, which would be with the city council, the city administration, and the rest of the staff. But at the same time, we can't take the ideas unless you voice your opinion. We have diverse businesses, we have a diverse community. We want to grow, we want to embrace what Marshall is and can be years to come. Many people had said that we have not focused a lot more of what we're saying. We have been just focusing on the outer, I guess, circle, as you can say. So as we proceed in ideas, plans, budgets in the future here for Marshall, I want to know that it comes from you and the focus is on you. Not here to promise, the stars, but eventually, hopefully we get there with the help, again, with the team of the city council members that you guys give your feedback to, as well as the rest of the staff. Would like to embrace more on the diversity. I would love to see more from out of town to move into Marshall so they can enjoy the amenities we have. We have a beautiful park recreation. We have beautiful bike trails. We have great amenities such as the YMCA. We have darts, bow hunting. I mean, we have it all here, and that's what Marshall is all about. We're here as a tight-knit community.
Thank you. I've actually thought about this question about, why are we in this? And I want to really start out by saying thank you to all of the people that are here. It says something for all 4 of the people that are on my left and right, that they step forward to serve the community. So thank you. The reason why I would decided to continue to run is that we're in the middle of a number of important issues in the community. One of those issues is economic development and bringing in companies like Solugen that would be a complement to ADM, that would be a complement to agriculture production, and will really be that pivot to more of a bio-type industrial base in the community. That's exciting, and I want to kind of see that through, and we have more to do on that. The Aquatic Center, as we have just talked about, that needs some careful attention. The housing issues, the attraction of new populations to the community, and the support of being an inclusive community, those are all what I would call unfinished business that I'm interested in continuing to serve and work on.
So I'm running for city council to see Marshall into its next chapter. As a business owner downtown, I really believe in what Marshall has and what can be. And over the last few years, I've applied for a few loans. they haven't been available at the right time. So making these EDA loans available year-round at a set rate would be great. That would very much stimulate all the businesses in town that want to grow and make this community better. You know, there's a lot of things that we can do to make Marshall aesthetically pleasing, putting up welcome signs, you know, redoing the downtown, you know, did a good job on 3rd Street. So, yeah, I guess I'm here just to voice the opinions of the small business owners, the farmers, and the citizens too. And some of you are my customers. And I think we all have a pretty good idea. It's a small town of what we want. And I think if you vote for me, we will accomplish that. So thank you.
Yes, I am wanting to be on city council because I just very much care about this community. I take a lot of pride in it. You know, I went away for a couple of years and came back, and I just love the direction that it's going in, and I want to be a part of it. I love raising my family here. I hope my kids raise their family here. It's just such a great community. I don't even think people realize how special it is here. So many families have, you know, came back. I have a lot of friends that have came back and are starting their own families. I want people to visit Marshall and be like, wow, that's a really cool city. That's a really cool community. I like to get involved in as many things as I can. You know, a lot of people my age are wanting an indoor playground for their kids. It's Minnesota, there's long winters here. The YMCA has that in the works, and I'm a part of that, and I plan to bring that through, just like I want to be a part of the aquatic center, and I plan to see that through too. Just being a part of it is very, very important to me, and I just have a lot of faith and confidence in this community and the direction that it's going in, and I want to be part of shaping that future.
Thank you to the organizers, the local news media, all of you who have joined us tonight or joining us on through radio and TV. What I offer is a balance and a mix of involvement, engagement, I will say perspective and experience. The perspective is having kids still at home. I've been here a long time, but I can see flip those 20 years around into the future. We want to be able to have a place where our graduates either stay or come back. They raise their kids so we can see our grandkids around. And that happens if we have continued to build on these strengths I've spoken about. The growth we've made in making Marshall bigger, more varied, more interesting, that has to continue. And a number of good ideas tonight will help us see those things happen. But they don't happen by accident. One thing I offer also in talking about experience, it's not appreciated very much, but this is a fairly young council. Half the members have been on for 2 years or less. What I would add to the mix is the recollection and the lessons learned from the recurring difficulties we face. One of them, not talked about tonight, is our city budget. We've had back-to-back 9% property tax increases in the city-wide levy, the likelihood of a third levy next year increase about the same. When I talk to folks, and I've been to about half the houses in the ward, and the subject of taxes comes up, not necessarily just from me, and people are sensitive to that. There are no easy solutions. We've had inflationary pressures on materials, on projects, labor costs. About 70% of our city budget is that. And what I would offer is some lessons learned and some perspective from previous service that might help deal with those problems in more manageable ways for the future. That's my pitch. My name is David Sturrock. I would be grateful for your vote in Ward 2 if you're voting at the Marshall Middle School. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you. This concludes our time for the City of Marshall Mayor's race and the City Council Ward 2 race. Thank you all for participating. Good luck to all of you. Great job. We'll now take a short pause as the next panelists take their places. We'll resume the County Commissioner District 5 race here in just a couple minutes. Welcome back. We'll now hear from the candidates for the Lyon County Commissioner race district number 5. Once again, we have questions that have been submitted ahead of time, but if any of the audience is interested in submitting a question, please pass them down to Taylor. She has some note cards over here. I'll be facilitating this panel. Let's meet the candidates for this race. We have 2 candidates for this 1 commissioner seat. The District 2 and 4 races are contested, so those candidates will not be part of the forum tonight. Running this year in District 5 is Rick Anderson and Tom Chandler. Thank you both for being here tonight. Candidates, you'll have up to 90 seconds to respond each question, and you can take less if you'd like. Please be alert for our timekeeper right in front of you, Matt, who will signal when you're down to 30 seconds, 10 seconds, and then 0. We'll rotate the order of speaking. We'll rotate the order of speaking in the order of which you are seated. So Rick will go first, and then Tom. Now on to a few questions. And then introduce yourself the first time, go around too for our radio audience. Candidates, what are your priorities if elected in the first year and then again in the first 5 years?
I'm Rick Anderson. I'm currently Lyon County Commissioner for District 5. I live in the Balton area on my family century farm. I think the priorities, at least in this first year, is there's going to be a lot of changes in our skyline within the county, especially in the southern part of the county in District 5. We had a presentation today with one of the energy companies. We know that there's 1 more for sure and possibly 2 more that are looking at putting up a lot of wind generation. There'll be a new power line that'll be coming from Becker down to the Garvin area with a quarter that's been purchased. So I think helping to make sure that those are placed in spots that doesn't affect every landowner, because land rights are an important thing. I can't argue land rights. If somebody wants to sign up for that, they have to have that priority. But I think we have to make sure that we do it in a respectful way for everybody there. In the 5 years, I think it was a lot of conversation that was talked about at the previous discussion, and we've talked about it at county board, is that childcare is probably the #1 thing that the county is going to have to figure out a way to help. If we're going to get these kids that are wanting to have families and get back into the workforce, we have to figure out a way to have those opportunities. And as was stated by Mayor Burns, I think the biggest thing is all the regulations coming down from the state are going to be a hard thing to do, and we're going to have to work really hard at that.
Hi, I'm Tom Chandler. I live by Russell and work in Ballatin. So, yeah, I guess this is kind of it's a difficult question to answer second, because a lot of the issues that we're going to be looking at working on are going to be the same no matter what, with the renewable energy coming in, and all that. I think short term, probably the biggest issue that we're going to see is budgeting. The inflation rate now is, as we all know, is at a pretty high rate, and I think that budgeting is probably going to be the biggest short term issue. But yeah, long term, over the next 5 years, the renewable energy landowner rights, whether it be as a landowner that wants windmills or a landowner that doesn't want windmills, a landowner that wants solar energy project that doesn't want that, allowing landowners to make the decisions to best serve the land that they own. So,
okay, Tom, we'll start with you on the next question. Speaking of renewable energy, what would you do as a county commissioner in regard to efforts to expand renewable and solar energy operations in Lyon County?
Well, like I was just saying, I think probably the biggest thing there is that it's a landowner responsibility, a landowner right, that if a farmer or a landowner wants that renewable energy on their property, and they're not affecting their neighbor's property, or they have agreements with their neighbor and both of them want that opportunity, that's something that the county, for the most part, I feel like needs to stay out of that decision-making process. That it's not the county's place to decide what I do with my land, what my neighbor does with his land. On the other hand, where the county does come into play is just keeping an eye on that those decisions are not affecting the neighbors that don't see eye to eye, and that the benefits are being spread throughout the entire community.
As far as the wind and solar go, we know that right now there's planned 2,000 acre solar farm that will be going in between the Balton area and the Garvin Corner. It's going to take that many acres of production land out of production. All of the landowners are absentee. When we get to that size project, the county really doesn't have a lot of say in it. The state pretty well regulates all of those large projects, as well as whether it be solar or whether it be wind. Once we get above that 5 megawatt on solar, and I think it's 25 on wind, we just don't get to say much. I think the thing that the county has to be dealing with is that a lot of these projects are going to be using either our county roads or the township roads, and we need to be able to protect that. We also have to deal with, we have a lot of county ditches out there as well as private tile, to make sure that any project that goes in, that we're not upsetting that ag economy, as was stated before, that drives a lot of what happens in this county, and we have to protect those areas.
Okay, thanks, Rick. Rick, you got the next question. Lyon County has experienced population decline from 2010 to 2020. What are your thoughts on ways to bring people back to our region and county?
Well, I think there was a good article that came out in a local paper that I get from the National Association of Counties that agribusiness or agritourism is getting to be a big business. I think we've seen some of that and bringing it in. I think the city of Marshall has been very aggressive in their EDA stuff. I know that some of the smaller communities down in District 5 would like to work on the housing as well as the opportunity, because we know that the population of Marshall doubles basically during the day with everybody coming in from outside of the Marshall area. So there are a lot of bedroom communities that we need to figure that out. Housing is definitely going to be one of the top priorities, I think, and I think we've talked about it at county board. We haven't been very good at EDA. I think we need to create some things, opportunities. I think right now we're looking at funding 3 different housing projects, one in Marshall, one in Tracy, and one in Balton. So I think that's a thing. I think EMS is going to be an important thing. As was talked about, you have to have those amenities. Emergency management and services are a key component to getting people to come in if they want to live in our small rural areas. We were able to get a $9.9 million grant, a federal grant with Southwest EMS to put an Avel system into about 54 ambulances services within 18 counties. So that's going to be a good thing.
I've got a daughter that just started college just this fall, and we've already had this conversation that she would like to come back to this area when she graduates, and the challenge is providing that opportunity and providing the necessary infrastructure for young families. I think you look at if I'm well established and I want to buy a house, there's a lot of houses that are available in that market for a well established family. If you look at housing availability in starter houses, there's not nearly the opportunity in the area. And then when you're starting a family, one of the very first things you're doing is having children. And the school systems that we have here are excellent. The daycare situation is something that desperately needs to be addressed in the area. So, that attracting the things we can do to make the community more attractive to younger people and give them the opportunity to move back to the place they actually want to move back to anyway. I think that's what's important.
Thanks, Tom. You actually do a good job teeing up the next questions. How can the county be a partner when recruiting and retaining future workforce?
I think, like I answered with the last question, I'll keep it really short. The same thing that I was saying, that providing that infrastructure. Maybe the one other thing that I'll expand on is I see a lot of young people that they go off to college and there's a lot of entertainment, a lot of things for them to do, whether it's going to concerts, going to sporting events. I think to add on to the housing that they need, the daycare that they need, adding on to that the entertainment that they desire. Those are the things that are going to bring the younger generation back into our community. So
I think a lot of what Tom said is true. I think we have to create those opportunities and experiences for them. I think a lot of the young people forget that if they do move to a large city and they want to go to a certain event, they're going to have to drive maybe an hour, hour and a half to get to it. Well, you start drawing an hour and a half, 2-hour circle around this Marshall or around Lyon County, that'll get you to Sioux Falls, to Mankato, almost to St. Cloud, and you're not that far from the metro area. So those opportunities are there, just that we don't provide and tell these kids that you can have those experiences if you want them. The colleges is something that we don't promote as much as we should, because there's plenty of opportunities with the plays and the drama department out there. MAFAC has been done an excellent job in providing a series of music here. I think just telling the story, I sit on the Southwest Tourism Group. I think we're working hard to make sure that we can get those people out and explore Southwest Minnesota and hopefully stay in Lyon County and create that job growth, because it is a great place to live.
Okay, thank you. The county board meets on Tuesdays at 10 a.m., which potentially limits many potential commissioner candidates. Would you consider moving or push to move board meetings to the evening and stream them like the city of Marshall does?
This got brought up, I think, when I first got on the board about trying to move it to meetings tonight. We moved, I think, for, I'm going to say 4 to 5 meetings. We didn't get any more people coming at night than what we did during the day. So we kind of dropped that project. As much as I hate to say this, our county attorney has always told us that we're better off not streaming. Not that we're trying to hide anything, but everything is recorded so that those tapes are there for people to do it. I wouldn't be a big pusher for it, Brad, so I think leaving it the way it is has worked out pretty well. If we need to hold public meetings, we always try to do those at night. So.
Yeah, I guess I don't really have a strong opinion either way on whether the meeting is held during the day, held at night. I don't think I think anybody that really wants to be involved and know what's going on or contribute, I think they make the effort. It would being in the evening would maybe make that easier for them, but I don't feel like it limits people's opportunity. Marshall's a pretty small community compared to a lot of the other communities around, the Mankato, Sioux Falls, stuff like that. and for the most part, I don't feel like there'd be a lot of advantage to moving it, streaming it. I think that word gets around pretty well as far as what's going on, what's happening at the commissioner meetings. I wouldn't be opposed to either of those changes, but at the same time, it's not something that's high priority for me.
Okay. Another question here from the audience. How will your experience influence decisions?
I think so. I have a lot of experience in what politicians would call the private sector, what I call the real world. Being out in the community, working. I think being at sporting events with the kids, being at the school activities, and like I say, my office is in town in Ballatin. People walk in every day. I hear about what's going on in the community more than just the, hey, I want this to happen. I want to talk to a county commissioner. It's these are the things that are going on in my life. Hearing those stories, but I feel like that experience, growing up on the farm, working in agriculture my entire life, serving in Iraq, I think all of those experiences they round me out for to bring a new perspective.
I think I've been very fortunate in my lifetime to be able to serve on a lot of different things, not just the local things, whether it was school board or township officer, but I've been able to be involved with some state organizations. So I get a perspective from all over the state to understand what's happening out there so that I can bring that back and work with the county and give the information to the other commissioners on this is what's happening out there. Maybe this is something we need to look at. Whether it be in, like I said, on a state commission for parks and trails. Well, we've been very fortunate to get some of that. So I think that's helped do that. I've also been able to sit on the board of directors for AMC, which helps do the lobbying for a lot of projects that have happened, not only in the state, but have been of great benefit to Lyon County. So I think that I've had a well-rounded experience, and I really think that bodes well for the county.
Okay. A couple more questions. Lyon County has been active in supporting all cities in the county with funding various projects. Do you wish for that to continue, and in what ways?
I think the biggest thing, and I think I talked about it a little bit, is that I think the county is working on trying to figure out the best way to do EDA. I think housing, daycare are going to be a couple of the top priorities. I think EMS is going to be a priority to make sure that we have those volunteers or somebody out there that if you fall and break a leg, that there's going to be somebody there that'll be there quickly. And they're all important. I think we were very fortunate when we got the ARPA money that we were able to do a lot of projects in these small communities as well as within the city of Marshall to benefit a lot of the stuff that was happening. If I had a magic wand, I'd try to have that $2 million again to do that every year. And maybe there'll be an opportunity if we get all this wind, the production tax might be a way that we can help fund some of that. So.
Yeah, I think, and that's a pretty easy answer. That yes, if I obviously support helping all the communities in the county, and I think it's important to on the county board to continue to represent those smaller communities outside of Marshall, and a lot of those people that that work in Marshall but live outside of Marshall, that they have the be it the necessary roads, the emergency services, the daycare, what have you, in their hometown community.
Okay. One last question, then we'll get to final statements. According to a 2023 Blandon report, Lyon County ranks 34th for broadband access out of 87 counties. What are your thoughts and plans on increasing broadband coverage in the county?
I think there has been a lot of, at least in the area that I'm familiar with, there has been a lot of improvement with Woodstock moving into more of southern Lyon County, creating some competition, getting more fiber to home. I think it's important to continue that. My wife works remotely from home, and she wouldn't be able to do that if it wasn't for high-speed internet. So, as far as plans, I guess I can't say that I have any plans, but it's definitely something that I feel like it affected where we decided to live when we moved. The last time we were looking at building a house, and the place we wanted to build, it only there was no option for high-speed internet. We had dial-up, or we had the point-to-point were our only options, and because my wife worked from home, it ruled out the location where we wanted to live. So obviously high-speed internet is very, very important in a rural community, and it only gets more important as ag technology gets to be more and more.
I think Tom hit on a good point in the fact that Woodstock Communications has brought in a lot. I think they were able to get a grant during the Obama era to bring a lot of high-speed fiber into that Woodstock area, which included the Russell and part of the Garvin area. I get asked that question a lot because there's some of the residents in the district that just can't get that point-to-point with it, and they're going to need that hard wire coming into the house. I think the biggest thing is that they need, and we need to, as a county, look at partners that want to do that, because they're the ones that have to go after the grants. We can certainly be supportive of it and hopefully be part of the funding source for it. A lot of the counties have done that around us. So we need to find those partners, and with as many partners as that are in the county, trying to pick one, you're not going to get everybody. So, but we have to keep pushing at it. We did a survey on it 6, 7, 8 years ago, looking at the underserved or population. We've been able to get some of the communities, which are the low-hanging fruit, to get that done. But rural is going to be a little harder in the county just for the number of agencies that we're going to have to deal with to get to there. So,
great. Thank you, Kenneth, again for being here. Now it is time for your 2-minute closing statement. Rick.
Well, I think I'm kind of like Matt Coleman. I'm not one that's going to say a lot of stuff. I've been very fortunate and blessed to serve on this board. There's a few things that now that have come up that I'd really like to see through. Because it was a struggle. I really couldn't decide whether I wanted to run or not. But when all the solar and wind started coming in, I thought, no, I need to try to see this through if I can. So, and it's been a pleasure. I can't say that it hasn't been. I know there's staff here that I ask a lot of tough questions of sometimes, but that's my job. So,
thanks, Rick. Much like Rick, I put a lot of thought into whether I wanted to run, mainly because I'm not running against Rick because I disagree with Rick. Obviously, it doesn't matter if it's your close family, your best friend, you're always going to have points that you disagree on. But for the most part, I think Rick and I generally see eye to eye on a lot of things. Having said that, I've always been driven to serve my community, whether it's I was on the Balaton Fire Department until my farm accident. Like I said, I served in the National Guard and did a tour in Iraq. And I feel like the opportunity to have somebody a little bit younger and somebody that hears a younger perspective on the county board is a good thing. And I guess that's the main reason why I decided to run, is because I had the drive to serve the community, and sometimes there's a lot of change that'll come to our county in the next 4 years, and I think I can help to drive that. So
Great. Thanks, Tom. This concludes our time for the Lyon County Commissioner Forum. Thank you all for participating. Good luck to you. This also concludes our program tonight. The Marshall Area Chamber of Commerce thanks all candidates for participating and wishes good luck to everyone that was here tonight. From the Marshall-Lyon County Library, this has been the 2024 Local Candidates Forum. Thank you for joining us, and be sure to vote on Tuesday, November 5th. Thank you, and have a good rest of your evening.